And as you were speaking, I was thinking about so many different ways that people actually have to show up and film and record. And I know past I've asked my clients several times, like, hey, listen, yeah, we can automate this, but you still need to show up. And that by itself is difficult when you're running a business.
Yes.
And you're saying to someone, hey, you need to show up. But I will say this, what I think most people don't understand, because it's so much noise, is that even though they get 28 views, that's 28 eyeballs. If they had a brick and mortar building and 28 people walk through the door, that's a lot of people walking through the door.
Yeah.
And I think that because they can't relate and they don't understand that you're getting visibility, that you would have to pay for one way or the other, whether it be a brick and mortar where you're paying monthly rent to get those 28 people to walk through the door. You know, it's still a lot of people, and we're not counting people the same because we're not looking on people the same, right? We don't value human interaction as much as we do. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on another episode of Entrepreneurial Truth. On today's podcast, we have Candice Smith. Candice, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do and who you serve?
Yeah, so I'm the founder of French Press Communications. I, started my entrepreneurial journey well, I guess in childhood. I grew up with two entrepreneurs as parents, but I started my first business in 2012 and became a serial social entrepreneur, which fed into my work now, helping support founders as they tell their own stories. That's largely what I do. I work to help founders tell their own stories and stop being the best kept secret in their industry.
Oh, I love that. Okay. And what made you lean into becoming a social entrepreneur?
Yeah. So I was the first person in my family on both sides to go to and through college. And because of that, I really valued the importance of education. And when I went into college, I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship through the Gates and Melinda Foundation, and I was able to get into Harvard University. And when I was there, I focused on women's studies with a particular lean into and a focus on education. And after I graduated, I was very interested in seeing how I could use education to help raise up other voices. A lot of what I had studied, especially for myself, was around the other, the concept of the other, and whether it's within ourselves, our own identities, what we silence, or within society, how the majority influences or silences the minority. And so education has a big factor in that. And for myself, being growing up biracial Latina, I am largely, I would say, white presenting, but I am Puerto Rican as well. And so having that as a part of my identity, I'd always felt was kind of fractured. And so in seeking to heal some of my own childhood wounds, I would say, I began to gravitate towards storytelling and education. So right after I graduated from college, I went into Teach for America. And in my time in the classroom, I noticed there was a lot of, there are many issues within the educational system, but specifically within my experience in the classroom, there was not enough of me to go around. And so I started my first business in education technology called Scholar Advance. And the idea was to bring virtual teachers into the classroom during the school day to reduce the student-teacher ratio and help close learning gaps. So I started that business initially in 2012. And through that experience, I met so many other incredible mission-driven entrepreneurs who were in the EdTech field and some who were in sustainability and environment, and started learning more about all of the incredible industry disrupting startups that were out there. And the more that I learned how to become an entrepreneur, because I'd started with a passion, right? And just because you start with a passion does not mean you know what you're doing in business. But the more that I learned about entrepreneurship and how my skill sets could translate into storytelling and communications, the more I gravitated towards supporting other founders that were doing incredible world-shaping things.
Wow. And how did you find that technology, or how did it translate? Did you find that a lot of those early founders that you had met have actually gone on to do significant things, or do you find that they have just literally just died out and it never went anywhere?
It really depends. I think a lot of most of the folks that I've met have stayed within the field in some way, shape, or form. A lot of the businesses that I saw get started, while they may not have survived in their current iteration, those founders went on to do other things that still aligned with their passions, whether they ended up working for a nonprofit or they started a venture fund. I know some that have started their own communities that are now thriving for founders. And so and I do still know some founders, like the founder of Class Dojo, which is now used nationwide in schools all around the country. So, some ventures have staying power. Others are learning experiences and stepping stones on our journeys.
And do you think that a large part of why they pivoted, based on what you know, or people that you met, do you think that if they had a stronger voice in the market, that would have kind of propelled them more? Or do you think that if they had been louder, it would have stifled them, based on the fact that they were, they were technology that kind of disrupted what was going on in terms of what we know as school?
Yeah, great question. If we're speaking specifically about education technology, the education system is so fractured, right? If we look at federal versus state versus district, as you go from macro to micro, there are no real clear-cut standards. When I went to Teach for America and I was teaching in Arizona, there were well over 50 individual districts within the Phoenix metro area. Phoenix is not that large, but every single school, well, not everyone, but the majority of schools there had their own charter. And so they were their own district. And so with the fracturing of a system like that, that makes it difficult for there to be a universal standard, especially when it comes to adopting certain technologies. So I would say a lot of folks that were trying to break in had trouble, mostly because they were going school to school and they were unable to break into some of the higher levels of educational governance, let's say, that would help them break into more schools at once. But even still, it continues to be an uphill battle for a lot of folks within that industry.
And do you think now, looking back, if they had platforms like TikTok and Facebook and all these other platforms, YouTube, where they could actually showcase and get their word out to the actual end user, if that would have actually helped to propel? And that's the first question.
Yeah, I would say they would have had a higher chance of success back then.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we're in a completely different ballgame. So now we live in an attention economy where everything is flooded with that information and with content and with AI. And authenticity is reigning supreme when it comes to building those relationships and making inroads, especially in the educational industry. But I would say back then, yeah, a lot of folks would have had a much better fighting chance, I would say, of getting noticed because there wasn't as much noise.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a different story.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. It is definitely a different story. And I, as someone who also runs an AI automation company, I feel like the founders that are there now, that are out here now playing in this field, don't actually understand technology. They don't understand how to use it to actually propel themselves. And I think a lot of what they're doing is just creating more noise.
Yeah.
Because they see it, they're using it, they're creating more noise, but not in the right way to actually help them. How do you feel like your business is something that helps them?
Yeah. So what we do at French Press Communications is we take our viz dev approach. I'm so sorry.
No worries. This is just real life. Yeah, sure.
Hey, Bud. And he's across the way. Bud terrorized the neighbors outside. Can you hear him?
A little bit, but it's fine.
Okay. All right. So going back to, could you repeat the question?
All right. No worries. Basically, I was just asking, in the current landscape that we are now, how do you think that what you do, supports them? Because it's so busy, there's so much noise, there's so, trying to get noticed in a very densely populated platform with AI and just a lot of noise. How do you help them get noticed?
Yeah, so with French Press Communications, as I mentioned, I founded it as a founder, right? A founder supporting other founders. And one of the things that I noticed across, hundreds of conversations with different founders was that there are certain patterns that started to emerge in the way that people either think about their visibility, their PR, their marketing, their digital footprint, and in the way that they're showing up. And so I created a framework approach called the VizDev framework. And with VizDev, which is short for visibility development, VizDev is the pipeline to trust and authority, whereas BizDev or business development is more of the pipeline to income and revenue, right? So if we think about VizDev, It's about creating a system that is proactive and that is repeatable. A lot of times, especially today, folks think that you need to be using tactics and content, right? And occasionally they'll have campaigns, but they're focused so much on, I need to be doing this and this and this. And if something comes in, if an opportunity comes in, they're like, oh my gosh, this is great. But what have they just done? They were reactive, right? They were not proactive about planning ahead and thinking about, how can I seed my message consistently over time? And how can I measure exactly what I'm doing so that I know what brings me the highest return on my investment, or ROI? So I created this system, the VizDev system, that goes through the different parts of the pipeline, the funnel to attention, because as I said, we're in an attention economy. And there are basically 5 different pillars that drive love for your brand. And I call those Amore, AMORE. It is an acronym that stands for the attention driving channels. So A stands for authority. Authority is any place like what we're doing right here on a podcast. I am sharing my opinion on your podcast. And so that is an authority building channel for me, right? So it's anywhere where you are sharing your opinion on someone else's platform. That can be a podcast, that can an interview of any kind, that can be going to a conference and speaking at a conference, that can be mentorship, writing an op-ed, anything like that. M stands for marketing, bit of a misnomer because it's not all marketing, it's paid marketing. But Apore doesn't make sense, it's Amore. So M stands for the paid marketing channels, anything that you do to invest money in order to boost your opinion. So that can be anything from spending money on social media platforms to amplify your posts, advertisements, paid advertisements, retargeting ads, Google AdWords, anything you're doing there. O is owned media. That is the most control that you have over your platforms. O is your website, your blog, your podcast, any place where you really control the narrative. R is the most underappreciated one, but it's the most important in my opinion. It's relationships. So how are you building relationships with your own network, outside of your network? How are you finding champions for your business, or just meeting people and turning them into champions of your business? And then finally, we have E, earned media, and that's traditional PR as you think of it, getting featured in the news, TV, digital, radio, what have you. So when we think of VizDev, you get categorized into one of 16 different modes. And based on that mode, it tells you what are, which of the 5 channels should you be prioritizing. You shouldn't be focusing on all 5, right? Again, going back to that adding noise, you should be focusing on excelling at 2 or 3 to start with. And when you do that, when you excel at 2 or 3 different channels, you can actually measure what's working. You can see how you're connecting with different members of your audience and start to understand what's working for you. Because it's not about capturing everybody's attention these days. It's about finding your niche, right? Mm-hmm. It's about going in. And when you can go in and find your niche and you're consistently getting attention from a particular subset of audience, that's how you know you're being successful.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this. Do you think that it's okay for people to go broad at first in order to be able to use the analytics to find their niche if they don't know who they can't identify exactly who they want to work with? Is it okay for them to go broad first, or do you think it's better for them to start out with one set, and then if that doesn't work for them, then pivot?
I would say niching down first is your best way to understand. If you start out broad, you may capture more attention initially, but what you're not doing is segmenting that attention and really understanding why that's working. And so for me, no, I would not start broad. I would start instead by asking yourself, who do you think, let's say you want to attract, with AI, there are so many applications, and absolutely you can have at some point any number of end users, right? And they fit so many different demographics. But when you're getting started, especially, or if you're stuck, you should be thinking instead, who is your earliest adopter, right? Who is most likely to say yes? And if you're not able to identify that, or you still need to do some research, think also, who wouldn't you want to work with? If you had to pick 10 people who were going to be your first customers, and you were going to ask them for testimonials afterwards, who would you not want to work with? And start identifying some of those metrics and some of those parameters, those variables that are not ideal for you. And that will help you start to narrow it down. Because even if your first assumption is incorrect, at least you've identified what doesn't work, right? And you need to be able to figure out, okay, I'm not going to be reaching out to work with HR managers, let's say, because perhaps they're not the right demographic for me. They're not the final decision maker. They don't sign the check. They're not the ones who are going to benefit the most and be able to spread the message more widely about this technology that I have. Instead, I think I want to go to a founder, or maybe founder is still too, it's still not quite there, right? It's too segmented. It's hard to break in and find the right types of founders, because you've got so many founders, industries, size of business, stage of business. Maybe instead you want to go to maybe you want to focus on local government, local government, and think about small business bureaus, and focus on getting in there and trying to connect with them, because they have a hub, and this hub can connect you with all of those founders. Or you want to focus on accelerators or incubator programs, because that will get you in front of a bunch of different founders at once, right? So thinking about and validating your initial hypotheses is going to be so much more valuable than starting broadly and trying to be like, okay, wait, so who did I capture? Where did this interest come from? Yeah, so thinking about it like that, whether you're going from demographic to demographic, or even from platform to platform, as you're testing, can really help you narrow down.
Oh. All right. So on that note, if you had to go back and give yourself some advice, what would that advice be, and what tool would you give yourself?
So for Scholar Advance, I started out the right way. I began my business by reaching out to the R in Amore. I focused on relationships first, right? So I went back to Arizona and I started reaching out to folks that I knew who were still working at those schools. And I said, would you be interested in trying a pilot program? right? And because I'd already built up trust over years, they were more likely to say yes. And so that was the right avenue forward for me to get started. However, I think where I broke down, or where my visibility opportunity, or sorry, my visibility approach broke down was in scaling and trying to break into other states outside of Arizona. I did it too quickly. I tried to scale up from Arizona without approaching more Arizona-based schools. And I also, and this is less of a visibility issue and more of a staffing issue, I was doing everything myself. And so when I was running admin and also on for monitoring the classes that were happening and making sure that everything was going well with technology and all of the students with the services that were already being rendered, that started to eat up my time. And so for me, I would say number one, spend more time focusing on the system and spend more time working on the business, not just in the business. I got very, very stuck working in the business and trying to make sure that I was micromanaging every single part of the service that I was providing to make it perfect according to my standards. And what that did was that severely limited me in my ability to grow, because I was going to, I practiced authority quite a lot. I was in a number of accelerator and incubator programs for EdTech companies. I had focused on getting on stages and doing pitch competitions. And that was fantastic. That was really great to help me build more of my relationships. And I did nurture them, which was fantastic. But ultimately, because I had spent so much time in the day-to-day of running the business, I was not securing enough time to actually get the leads that I needed. And it was a very long and difficult sales cycle. So that for me would be two of my biggest learnings in terms of what to do differently. As far as a tool, I would say there's no specific tool that I would have used in terms of software, but I would say leveraging the tool of a pilot program, or leveraging the tool of, I don't want to say a freebie, but demonstrating value more quickly would have been more helpful. I take part of that back. I will also say, I think it would have been helpful to have more of a digital presence consistently, whether it's a newsletter of some sort or consistent updates on how progress was going. It would have been difficult for me to share, for privacy reasons, actual lessons taking place, and sharing reels of that or what have you. It would have had to be a very you have to get parent buy-in, and there's all kinds of privacy issues when you're working with students and working with minors in the education industry. But I would say having some sort of a newsletter, something that we could update more frequently to share student success stories, because we had so many. And it was difficult to translate that success even to the champions that we had, So my updates were very infrequent.
Oh, I like that. So going back to that place and where you are now, is that something that you recommend to other entrepreneurs? Like, hey, listen, you need to make sure that you stay in front of your audience, or you stay in front of people by even doing a newsletter if you find that things are, like, for example, for you in that situation where you couldn't be doing reels, but maybe a newsletter. Do you still give that same advice?
Oh, absolutely. So that is a big part of our analysis. So with the approach that I shared, very high level, more of like theoretical perspective, we're actually doing the work with the client to make sure that they are setting up their system, that they are being visible. So when we get started with a new client, we'll say, okay, so based on your intake form, your onboarding questionnaire, we've learned as much as we can about you in the first 2 to 3 weeks that we can. Based on this, we've performed a visibility audit, and here's where we're seeing you're currently getting the most traction. And based on that, and based on your mode, and based on Amore, here's where we think you're going to have the most success. Now let's start building out an actual system to make that happen. So if it's newsletters, let's start thinking, okay, let's audit your the demographic of your audience, if they have one so far, and let's say they've identified, okay, we have XYZ, 200 people in our email list. And I'll say, okay, where did you get them from? Right? So where did they come from? And how are they engaging? What are they engaging with? Have we segmented this audience? If you haven't, maybe there's some way that we can add in either an opt-in, or you can email them. 200 people, it's a lot, but it's not too many to email and say, hey, thanks for following. What do you like about this newsletter? Or what interested you in this newsletter? How did you find me? Right? So reaching out to those people and actually getting real feedback, right? So thinking through what are the demographics, and then going into the psychographics. What are your pain points right now? What are things that you're struggling with? Because you have to get outside of your own head and outside of your own feedback bubble when you are trying to learn how to be visible, right? Because you need to be able to speak to your ideal audience in a way that they feel understood. And if you can do that, then you're going to have paying customers, right? But in order to do that, you have to know what their pain points are. You have to know how they describe their pain points so you can use that same wording back to them. And if you don't realize, if I'm saying, intervention and learning gap to somebody, and let's say I'm trying to reach out to parents and they're like, oh my God, my child doesn't need an intervention. What are you saying, right? They're going to think that means something totally different than it does to an educator who's like, oh yes, okay, so educational intervention, we're going to sit down, it's in a small group, a 1-to-8 or 1-to-4 student-teacher ratio or teacher-student ratio. And so speaking to your audience with the language that they understand is what's going to help you break through those barriers. And it's what helps people feel seen. So yeah, if we're identifying that our client is just not consistently showing up, and this happens all the time because they're working so hard on making sure that their business is doing everything in the right way, the service or the product is ideal, right? And they haven't poked their head above water in months. We're going to say, all right, it's time to be visible now. And we're going to help you do that. Maybe it's your LinkedIn presence, maybe it's your newsletter. But you have to start connecting and engaging with people, even if it's small touches, right? Because in an attention economy, you can't just come out all at once and say, oh, I'm here. Guys, I built this incredible thing, right? Because when you do that, people are going to be like, oh, that's great. God, I've got so much on my plate right now. All right, swipe, 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 swipe. And so everything that you built up for has a much lower chance of actually making a splash, as opposed to, hey, I know you're really busy. I've got this thing coming in like 4 months, and I'm super excited about it because I know that it's going to help you with this one particular problem that you have. So stay tuned. I'll be back next week. Hey, so remember that thing I told you that I'm launching in 4 months? This is something to sneak preview. And here's a little behind the scenes, or here's why we're building this thing, right? So starting to pepper out messages and get in front of your audience consistently is really what does it, right? Being proactive and building out, even if it doesn't feel like, God, I've posted this one thing, it got 4 likes, it got 28 views, or whatever that thing may be. Remember, you are building a footprint. You are building that digital footprint, and you are building up your owned media. So remember, you're building up that content over time. And the more that you not only create content, but try to connect with people or connect back to the data and see, is the data telling you that this is working, right? Are you starting to get more engagement when you do this one different thing, or have a different hook, or speak directly to the pain point? Or maybe it's not even your face. You're showing a screenshot, or a motion capture video of the technology that you're doing, and you're just going through some of it. Did that get more engagement than some of the other things that you were talking about, right? Lean into that, right? Listen to the data, be proactive.
Well, there's a lot there. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about so many different ways that people actually have to show up and film and record. And I know Cass have asked my clients several times, like, hey, listen, yeah, we can automate this, but you still need to show up. And that by itself is difficult when you're running a business.
Yes.
And you're saying to someone, hey, you need to show up. But I will say this, what I think most people don't understand, because it's so much noise, is that even though they get 28 views, that's 28 eyeballs. If they had a brick and mortar building and 28 people walk through the door, that's a lot of people walking through the door.
Yeah.
And I think that because they can't relate and they don't understand that you're getting visibility, that you would have to pay for one way or the other, whether it be a brick and mortar where you're paying monthly rent to get those 28 people to walk through the door. It's still a lot of people, and we're not counting people the same because we're not looking on people the same, right? We don't value human interaction as much as we do. How are you kind of letting them know that that's still visibility and that's still people, and those are still, that's still a huge number?
Yeah. So it's going to depend on the channel, right? Because getting, let's say having a post get 28 views versus, interacting with 28 people at a conference, right? Those are 2 different types of interactions, and the quality of interaction is different, right?
Ooh.
So we do want to think about that. And that's why I do say, oh, did you want to jump in?
I wanted to jump in. Okay. You said the quality of the interaction is different, but the quality of the interaction is different only if you can actually engage people in a networking setting. Because there are a lot of people that go to networking events and hand out 28 cards. And it's the same as the visibility of 28 people seeing you online.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
it all depends
So
on how intentional you are. So go ahead, go ahead.
yes, absolutely. And we're aligned. We're on the same page here. So when I talk about quality, um, the every single touch point is the top of the funnel, right? Or every single starting touch point is the top of the funnel for you, right? So you have to think through, okay, this is the first time that this person has interacted with me. What are their takeaways? How am I going to continue to capture their attention and make sure that they are more likely to follow up? Now, different types of interactions will yield different results. You need to be, so if you and I met at a networking conference, and I not only handed out my business card, but we had a very engaging conversation. And we connected about 2 or 3 things that we really appreciate about each other, or we have things in common, right? That we just want to learn more about. That is going to be so much more meaningful because we've actually gone a little bit farther down the pipeline, right? And so it's not just that first impression, it's first impression plus. And so you're starting to actually build trust the more that you're able to engage and interact. It's not just that first that first notice that somebody takes of you. And so with the different channels that you have available to you, there are different opportunities that you can engage with. So if somebody listens to me on this podcast, sure, that could be one way for them to hear about me. And, maybe they sign up for my VizDev quiz and they take it, right? So that would be another step, right? And then let me engage my relationships. Let me circle back with you and follow up and say, hey, what did you think about that? How did you hear about me, by the way? And starting that conversation. So it's not just about the first time impression. It is also about the follow-up. So I have a story for you. One of my clients told me, she's like, I want to get into Vogue. And I was like, ooh, all right. So it's a tall order. We're going to do our best and we're going to try to get you into Vogue. And lo and behold, 2 months later, we're in Vogue. We are so excited. She's on a gift guide list for the holidays. We've done everything that we can to break in and sent a sample of her product. And she comes back and she's disappointed. And I said, what's the matter? You got into Vogue. And she goes, we didn't make that many sales this weekend. And I said, well, hang on a minute. Let's take a look at the data. What happened after you got that feature? She said, well, we got about 2,000 people came immediately and we got 200 newsletter signups. I said, whoa, girl, hold on. Hang on a minute. So you have 2,000 people that have come to you. I know you've got retargeting ads because I get them all the time. So those people are going to start being retargeted. They're in your funnel now. And then you have 200 people that actually went further and signed up for your newsletter. Start reaching out to them. Start peppering them now and saying, hey, you may have seen us in Vogue's gift guide for the holidays. And here are some other things that you should know about our sustainable mission. And here are some other things about what we do that you may be interested in, right? So it's not just about the initial eyeballs, but it's how you leverage them afterwards, right? And there is something to be said as well about that intentionality at every stage of the process. Not to put so much pressure because it's easy to say intentionality and then everyone's like, oh my God, I have to have the perfect post every time. And then you get analysis paralysis. Not saying that, but it's still important to show up and engage. So if someone is engaging, let's say they like or they leave a comment back. Go to their, check out who liked you or who engaged. Go to their profile, like them back. If you don't have time to do it, see if you can get an assistant and have them focus on that re-engagement for you, right? There are almost always ways to go back and show that you're there and show that you're listening and you're present.
Oh, I really like that. Oh man, there's so much to unpack. It's kind of like, again, back to that analogy of going to a networking event, handing somebody your card, and then at the end of the day, you never follow up with that person that you either received the card from or you gave the card to. So I feel like, you spend all these hundreds of hours building businesses, and you're building these businesses to network with these people, to get these customers in, and then you go to the next one and you build again, and then every event or every touch point is you're reinventing what you've already done.
Oh, yeah.
What would you say is the number one thing that people could do? Like, you get them in the top of the funnel, and you get they're now, let's say, middle of funnel, but you don't know how to convert from that point. So even, for example, that same customer, she had 20 people in there, 200 people in her newsletter now. How does she convert them now to a paying customer?
Yeah. So when we're looking at the conversion, so obviously some people will show up and they're just ready to buy. And those are our unicorns. We love those people, right? When they buy, follow up with them. Hey, where did you find us? What interested you? And actually, interestingly, this is what a lot of retail companies are starting to do. Big fashion companies, they are starting to reach out to some of their best customers on their lists. And they're saying, hey, we wanted to thank you for being such a great customer. Here's a coupon. Here is a freebie of some sort. This is a tactic that a lot of big companies are doing now. And, reaching out and reconnecting with those, number one, the earlier adopters, right? You definitely have to do that and try and glean insights from them if you can. Right? It is absolutely worth your time because these people have already indicated that they're putting trust in you in some way, shape, or form, right? I trust you to deliver a great product. Or maybe if they've signed up for your newsletter, I trust you to write an interesting newsletter that I will spend time in my busy day, in my busy life, to stop what I'm doing and read for a little bit, right? They are indicating that there is the start of trust. And so you need to be thinking about, how can I deliver on that? And the more that you know about where folks have come from, let's say she's able to say, all right, I know that these people came to my website, and obviously you have to have the tracking in place for this. I know that these people came to my website on this day and they signed up, very clearly coming from this article. This article was about sustainably produced fashion. I know that they care about sustainability. There's no other reason why they would be on here. Also, it's a gift guide. They're very likely looking for gifts for people. So that becomes two different ways that they could then go back and try to re-engage those customers, right? So you're not only sending your regular emails, but you might send a, hey, we noticed you might be interested in sustainability and gift guides, or, hey, December's around the corner. We would love to interest you, or Valentine's Day is around the corner, or, whatever, that Mother's Day, what have you, circling back because that person had intent. in some way, shape, or form. And so reminding them of the sustainable aspects of the business and what is their ethos, why they were even chosen for that list in the first place, and what makes them great. What is their value proposition? And then secondly, reminding them, hey, maybe it's time to give yourself a gift, right? You were looking for gifts for someone else, but based on what we've learned, here's what we're thinking. Here are 3 different types of patterns that you might be interested in, or here are 3 different fits that you might be interested in. And so you can make that a quiz, a mini poll, something like that, right? To further get insight, or you just leave it as links and see if they're more inclined to purchase, right? But having those more personalized touches makes all the difference.
Awesome. You have given our audience so much insight. I really hope that they're listening keenly. Is there anything that you would like to leave with them?
So I'd say right now, this is something that I'm dealing with. I know everybody right now is dealing with it because AI is omnipresent these days. And the rules of engagement, the playbooks that we've had are rapidly shifting. And a lot of what we know about entrepreneurship, even a couple of years ago, is no longer applying. Remember as much as you can to make sure that you're showing up and not a bot. When you do show up, make sure it's you. There's so much generic AI produced content these days, and it's because you can, right? And because we have this, inherently we have this FOMO, right? This fear of missing out, this need to be present, to do all the things, to be everywhere, to show up in all the places, because we're passionate about what we do. We believe that the world, or that a certain niche subsection of the world, needs what we're building, right? And so we want to be everywhere, and AI seemingly gives us the tools that we need to do that. Don't give in. Focus on showing up authentically and connecting with your ideal audience. Use the AI tools for that. There are absolutely great ways to identify, and I'll give you one more tip. If you record your conversations, let's say, using a transcript, do it ethically, please. Record your conversations with people and feed them into an AI bot and ask it to identify the patterns of the pain points that people are talking about, or the patterns of how you're selling yourself. Those are incredible insights that you can glean from the nature of the work that you do and the sales messaging and the narrative that you have. Use it for things like that, and then go back and show up the way that you know how, because you got into this to help people. So just remember, keep yourself in the equation.
Oh, I love that. How can our listeners find you?
Yeah, so you can find us at frenchpresspr.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Candice Smith, MED, that's Master's in Education. And you can also take our VizDev quiz. So taking our VizDev quiz, relatively short, should take no more than 3 to 5 minutes. You get to figure out which of the modes you are, and it tells you what Amore channels you should be focusing on. And you can find that at bit.ly/VizDev. That is VIZDEV. So bit.ly/VizDev.
Love it. Thank you so much, Candice, for being here today. It was a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you again so much for having me. Loved all the questions that you asked.
Oh, thank you so much. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. It was an awesome, awesome time with you here.